Maya Winters sat in the back corner of the xenobiology lecture hall, her datapad open but her eyes watching everything around her. She had chosen this seat on the first day of class 3 months ago, and she had stayed there ever since. It was far enough from the front that Professor Veltamon rarely called on her, but close enough that she could hear every word. The classroom was full of noise today. A Cravathi student named Jara was arguing loudly with her partner about the correct way to analyze emotional responses in different species. The Cravathi were tall and covered in dark blue scales, and they never seemed to speak quietly about anything. 3 rows ahead, a group of human students laughed at something on their shared screen. Near the window, 2 Assyri scholars debated in their musical language, their silver skin shimmering as they gestured with their long fingers. Maya wrote everything down, not just the lecture notes, but the other things too. The way Zara's scales darkened when she got frustrated, the way the Osiri students tilted their heads when they disagreed with something, the way her human classmate Danny rubbed his neck when he was confused. She had notebooks full of these observations, though she had never shown them to anyone. "Miss Winters!" Professor Veltamon's voice cut through the noise. Maya looked up, her heart beating faster. The Asari professor was looking directly at her with his large, dark eyes. "You have been very quiet this semester. Do you have thoughts on how humans process fear differently than Cravathi?" Every head in the room turned to look at her. Maya felt her face grow hot. She opened her mouth, then closed it. She knew the answer. She had written 3 pages about it in her notebook just last week. But the words stuck in her throat like always. Maya started. "Never mind," Veltamon said gently, turning back to the board. "Perhaps another time." Zara whispered something to her partner, and they both laughed. Maya looked down at her datapad, her cheeks burning. This happened at least once a week. She was 22 years old, and she still could not speak up in class. The lecture ended an hour later. Maya gathered her things slowly, waiting for the room to empty. She had grown up on Kepler 442b, a quiet colony world where children learned to watch the sky for storms and read the body language of the local animals before they could read books. Speaking was less important than seeing. But here at the Galactic Academy on Harmony Point Station, everyone seemed to have so much to say, all the time. She was walking down the corridor toward the transport hub when her datapad buzzed. A message from Professor Veltamon. Maya stopped walking and opened it. "Please come to my office. Important matter. VT." Maya's stomach tightened. Was she failing the class? She had perfect scores on all her written work, but maybe her silence was a problem. She changed direction and headed toward the faculty wing. Professor Veltamon's office was small and filled with plants from a dozen different worlds. He was standing by the window when Maya arrived, looking out at the stars beyond the station. "Sit, please," he said without turning around. Maya sat in the chair across from his desk, her hands folded in her lap. "You are not in trouble," Veltamon said, finally turning to face her. "I asked you here because I need your help with something unusual." Maya blinked. "My help?" "Yes. There has been a crisis on Dusthaven, a mining world in the Outer Reach. A plague outbreak 3 weeks ago. They contained it quickly, but over 800 beings survived. Humans, Cravathi, Osiri, Talarian, and others. All of them are traumatized. Many watched friends and family die." Maya nodded slowly. She had heard about Dusthaven on the news feeds. "The Galactic Medical Corps has sent trauma counselors," Veltamon continued, "but they are struggling. Each species grieves differently. What comforts a human might offend a Cravathi. What helps an Osiri process loss might confuse a Talarian. The counselors are trained, but they are not observant in the way you are." "I don't understand," Maya said quietly. Veltamon picked up a datapad from his desk and handed it to her. "These are your class notes from the past 3 months. I review all student work. Your observations about emotional responses across species are the most detailed and accurate I have seen in 15 years of teaching." Maya looked at the screen. It was her notebook, the one she thought no one would ever read. "You see things others miss," Veltamon said. "You watch, you listen, you understand that communication is not always about words. The survivors on Dusthaven need someone like you." "But I'm just a student," Maya said. "I don't even talk in class." How can I help people who are suffering? Perhaps that is exactly why you can help them, Veltamon replied. Sometimes the best healers are not the ones who talk the most. They are the ones who know how to be present and watch and truly see what others need. Maya looked down at her hands. Her whole life, people had told her she needed to speak up more, be louder, be more confident. Now someone was telling her that her quiet nature might actually be useful. I'm scared, she admitted. Good, Veltamon said. Fear means you understand the weight of what I'm asking. A transport leaves for Dust Haven tomorrow morning. Think about it tonight. If you decide to go, I will arrange everything. Maya left his office with her mind spinning. She walked back to her small quarters on the student level and sat by her window, looking out at the stars. Somewhere out there, 800 beings were suffering. And somehow, her professor thought she could help them. She pulled up her notebooks on her datapad and started reading through her observations. Maybe Veltamon was right. Maybe watching and listening was exactly what those survivors needed. The transport ship landed on Dust Haven 36 hours later. Maya stepped off the ramp and felt the hot, dry air hit her face. The mining world was mostly desert, with scattered settlements built around the extraction sites. The sky was orange, and two small suns hung low on the horizon. Dr. Helen Martinez met her at the landing pad. She was a human woman in her 50s, with gray hair pulled back in a tight bun and tired eyes. You must be Maya Winters. Professor Veltamon sent word you were coming. Welcome to Dust Haven. Maya shook her hand. Thank you for having me. I'll be honest with you, Helen said as they walked toward a cluster of temporary buildings. We need all the help we can get. The survivors are not responding well to traditional counseling. We have 12 trained therapists here, but every day feels like we're losing ground. The medical camp was organized but chaotic. Maya saw counselors moving between buildings, carrying data pads and looking frustrated. Through open windows, she could hear voices. Some were shouting, some were crying. Some were silent in a way that felt heavy and wrong. Helen showed her to a small room with a bed and a desk. Get settled. We have a team meeting in an hour. You can observe our methods and see where you think you might fit in. Maya unpacked her few belongings and sat on the bed. Through the thin walls, she could hear someone sobbing. Her hands shook slightly. What was she doing here? She was just a student who took good notes. These people needed real help. The team meeting was held in the largest building. 12 counselors sat around a long table, all of them looking exhausted. Helen introduced Maya as a specialist in cross-species emotional responses. Maya felt her face grow warm when everyone looked at her. We're trying everything, said a counselor named Paul Rodriguez, a human man with dark circles under his eyes. But the Cravathi won't talk about their feelings. They say it's shameful to show weakness. The Asiri want to analyze everything logically, added an Asiri counselor named Sevmara. But grief is not logical. When I try to help them process emotions, they shut down. And the humans, Helen sighed, half of them won't admit they need help at all. They keep saying they're fine when clearly they're not. Maya listened to each counselor describe their struggles. They were all trying so hard, but they were using the same approaches for every species. Talk therapy, group sessions, structured emotional exercises. All good methods, but not right for everyone. Can I observe some sessions tomorrow? Maya asked quietly. Helen nodded. Of course. That's why you're here. The next morning, Maya started her observations. She sat in the corner of a group session with 5 Cravathi survivors. The counselor, Paul, was trying to get them to share their feelings about losing their friends in the outbreak. It's important to express your grief, Paul said. Holding it inside will only make it worse. The Cravathi sat rigid in their chairs. Their scales had turned almost black, which Maya knew meant they were deeply uncomfortable. One of them, a young male named Drax, kept looking at the door like he wanted to run. Maya wrote in her notebook, Cravathi scales darkening, body language closed. Direct questions about feelings causing stress, not relief. After 30 minutes, Paul ended the session with a sigh. The Cravathi left quickly, barely looking at each other. See what I mean? Paul said to Maya. They won't open up. Maya spent the rest of the day moving between sessions. She watched an Asiri counselor try to lead a meditation exercise with human survivors. but the humans got restless and distracted. She observed a human counselor teaching breathing techniques to Talarian refugees, but Talarians breathed through skin pores, and the whole concept confused them. But Maya also noticed other things the counselors were too busy to see. In the recreation area, she saw a young Kravathi child sitting alone, drawing pictures in the dust with a stick. The child drew the same image over and over, a circle with lines coming out of it. Maya sat down nearby, not speaking, just watching. After a while, the child looked at her and kept drawing. Maya realized the image was the son of the child's homeworld, the one she would never see again. In the medical building, she noticed an elderly Assyri man named Temvara who hummed the same tune constantly while organizing medical supplies. The other counselors found it annoying and kept trying to stop him, but Maya recognized it as a mourning song from Assyri culture. He was grieving, just not in the way they expected. She saw a human woman named Claire who volunteered for every task, working from dawn until she collapsed at night. The counselors praised her helpfulness, but Maya watched Claire's hands shake when she stopped moving. She watched the woman's eyes, hollow and distant. Claire wasn't being helpful. She was running from her pain. Maya filled 3 notebooks in 2 days. She documented every tiny signal of grief and healing across all the species. The way a Kravathi's scales lightened when they felt safe. The way Assyri hummed when processing difficult emotions. The way humans busied themselves to avoid feeling. On the 3rd day, Helen found Maya sitting outside one of the shelter buildings. "You've been very quiet since you arrived," Helen said, sitting down beside her. "What are you thinking?" Maya looked at her notebook, then at Helen. I think everyone is trying to help people talk. But maybe some people don't heal by talking. Maybe they heal by drawing, or humming, or moving. Or just being quiet with someone who understands. Helen was silent for a long moment. "Show me what you mean." Maya opened her notebook and showed Helen her observations. She pointed out the patterns she had seen, the nonverbal ways each species processed trauma. Helen read through the pages, her eyes growing wider. "This is remarkable. You've documented things we completely missed." "Can I try something?" Maya asked. "With the survivors? What do you want to do?" "I want to just sit with them, not run sessions, not try to make them talk. Just be present and watch and respond to what they actually need, not what we think they need." Helen looked at her for a long moment, then nodded. "Show me." The next morning, Helen gave Maya permission to try her approach. Maya started with the Kravathi child she had seen drawing in the dust. The girl's name was Kessa, and she had lost both her parents in the outbreak. Every counselor had tried to get her to talk about her feelings, but Kessa remained silent. Maya found Kessa in the same spot, drawing the same sun symbol in the dirt. Instead of asking questions, Maya simply sat down a few feet away. She picked up her own stick and started drawing in the dust. She drew simple shapes at first. A circle, a square, a star. Kessa watched her from the corner of her eye, but kept drawing. Maya continued drawing for 20 minutes without saying a word. Then she drew a mountain, because she remembered from her studies that Kessa's colony had been in a mountain region. Kessa stopped drawing. She looked at Maya's mountain, then drew her own beside it. Hers was bigger and had more detail. They drew together in silence for an hour. Kessa drew her home, her family's dwelling, the mining facility where her father had worked, and finally, 2 figures standing together. Maya understood. Those were Kessa's parents. "They were brave," Maya said softly in the Kravathi language, using the word that meant honorable courage. Kessa's scales, which had been dark gray for weeks, lightened just slightly. She nodded once and kept drawing. Maya reported back to Helen that evening. She didn't talk, but she communicated. She showed me her grief through her drawings. That's how she needs to process this, not through words. Helen listened carefully. "What about the others? Can you work with them too?" Maya nodded. "I'd like to try." Over the next week, Maya worked with survivors across all the species. She didn't run formal counseling sessions. Instead, she practiced what she called quiet presence. She sat with an Osiri elder named Temvera while he hummed his morning songs and organized supplies. She didn't try to stop him or analyze his behavior. She simply hummed along softly, learning his song, showing him that his grief was seen and accepted. After 3 days, Temvara finally spoke to her. "You are the first person who has not tried to make me stop," he said. "This song is how my people say goodbye. It must be sung until the heart is ready to be quiet." Maya also worked with Claire, the human woman who worked constantly. Instead of praising Claire's helpfulness like others did, Maya started working alongside her in silence. When Claire organized supplies, Maya organized with her. When Claire cleaned the medical equipment, Maya cleaned beside her. On the 4th day, Claire's hands started shaking so badly she dropped a box of bandages. Maya caught them and set them down. She didn't say anything. She just stood there, present and calm. Claire's face crumpled. "I can't stop moving," she whispered. "If I stop, I'll have to think about it, about watching them die, about not being able to help them." "You can stop," Maya said quietly. "I'm here. You don't have to hold it alone anymore." Claire cried for the first time in 3 weeks. Maya sat with her, not trying to fix anything, just being present, while Claire finally let herself feel. The breakthrough came with Throck, a Kravathi warrior who had refused all help since arriving at the camp. He was 40 years old, a decorated soldier who had led mining security teams for 15 years. He had watched his entire team die, and now he sat in his shelter all day, staring at the wall. His scales were black as night, a sign of deep shame in Kravathi culture. Every counselor had tried to reach him. They had tried talk therapy, meditation, even traditional Kravathi honor rituals. Nothing worked. Throck barely acknowledged their presence. Helen asked Maya to try, though she warned that this might be beyond what Maya could help with. "He won't speak. He won't move. He won't even look at us. I'm worried we're going to lose him." Maya approached Throck's shelter with her heart beating fast. She had never dealt with someone this deeply traumatized, but she remembered her training from home, from watching the animals on her colony world. Sometimes the most frightened creatures needed you to simply exist near them without demands or expectations. She entered Throck's shelter and sat down against the wall, far enough away that she wasn't crowding him. She didn't speak. She didn't look directly at him. She just sat. She came back every day for 5 days. Each day, she sat a little closer. She brought her notebook and wrote her observations about other survivors. She ate her meals there. She existed in his space without asking anything of him. On the 6th day, Throck finally spoke. "Why do you keep coming here?" Maya looked up from her notebook. "Because you shouldn't be alone with this." "I failed them," Throck said, his voice rough from disuse. "I was supposed to protect my team. I am a warrior. That is my purpose. And I failed." Maya set down her notebook. She remembered reading about Kravathi warrior culture. They processed emotions through physical practice, through the meditation movements they used before battle. "In my studies, I learned that Kravathi warriors have a practice," Maya said carefully. "A way of moving through shame and finding balance again. The combat meditation." Throck's scales flickered slightly, the first color change she had seen. "I cannot do those movements. They are for warriors with honor. They are for warriors who are hurting," Maya said, "which is what you are right now." She stood up slowly. "I don't know the movements, but if you showed me, I would practice with you. You wouldn't have to do it alone." Throck looked at her for a long moment. Then, slowly, he stood. His movements were stiff at first, his body weak from days of sitting. But he began the first position of the combat meditation, a slow, deliberate stance that required balance and focus. Maya watched carefully, then copied his position as best she could. She was clumsy and uncertain, but she tried. Something changed in Throck's eyes. He adjusted her stance with a gentle touch, showing her the proper form. They moved through the positions together in silence. It wasn't therapy. It wasn't counseling. It was simply 2 beings sharing a practice, one helping the other find their way back. Word spread quickly through the medical camp about Maya's methods. Other counselors started asking questions about her approach. How did she know what each survivor needed? Why did her quiet presence work when their structured sessions failed? Helen watched everything carefully, taking notes of her own. 2 weeks after Maya arrived on Dusthaven, Helen called her into the office. Maya expected another assignment, maybe another difficult survivor who needed help. Instead, Helen had a message displayed on her screen. "This is from the Galactic Medical Corps headquarters," Helen said. "They want to adopt your observation protocols as part of their standard trauma response training." Maya felt her stomach drop. "What does that mean?" "It means they want you to present your methods at the Central Medical Conference on Unity Station. 3,000 doctors, counselors, and emergency responders from across the galaxy will be there. They want you to teach them what you've been doing here." Maya sat down heavily in the chair. "I can't do that. I can't stand in front of 3,000 people and talk. I barely made it through Professor Veltamon's class." Helen leaned forward. "Maya, what you're doing here is saving lives. Kessa is drawing with other children now. Temvara finished his morning song and started helping other Asiri survivors. Claire is sleeping through the night. And Throck just volunteered to help train the security teams. These are people who were disappearing into their grief. And you brought them back." "That's different," Maya said, her voice shaking. "That's just sitting with people. That's just watching and listening. Anyone can do that." "But they don't," Helen said firmly. "That's the problem. Everyone is so focused on doing something, fixing something, that they forget to simply be present. You have a gift, Maya, and you're the only one who can teach others how to use it." Maya left the office feeling sick. The conference was in 6 weeks. 6 weeks to prepare a presentation that terrified her more than anything she had ever faced. That evening, she sat outside her quarters, looking up at the orange sky. She heard footsteps and turned to see a woman approaching. She was human, probably in her 30s, wearing the uniform of the relief vessel Steadfast. "Mind if I sit?" the woman asked. Maya shook her head. The woman sat down on the sand beside her. "I'm Lisa Morgan. I captain the Steadfast. We've been doing supply runs for the medical camp." Lisa looked out at the horizon. "Helen told me you're having doubts about the conference." "I'm not a speaker," Maya said. "I'm not even a real counselor. I'm just a student who takes notes." Lisa smiled. "Can I tell you something? I never wanted to be a captain. I was a navigation officer for 12 years. Quiet, behind the scenes, doing my job without anyone noticing. Then my captain died in an accident. And suddenly I was in charge of a ship with 40 crew members." "What did you do?" Maya asked. "I almost quit," Lisa admitted. "I thought I needed to be loud and commanding like my old captain. But my first officer, an older man named Vincent Hayes, told me something I'll never forget. He said leadership isn't about being the loudest voice in the room. It's about knowing when to speak and when to listen. It's about seeing what others miss." Maya looked at her. "But you still have to give orders. You still have to speak up." "True," Lisa said. "But I do it in my own way. I don't yell. I don't give big speeches. I speak clearly and simply when I need to, and I listen carefully the rest of the time. My crew trusts me because I see them, really see them, just like you see the survivors here." Lisa stood up and brushed sand from her uniform. "You don't have to become someone else to do this, Maya. You just have to be yourself in front of a bigger audience. Teach them the way you work best, quietly and clearly." Over the next 3 weeks, Maya prepared for the conference. But she didn't prepare like a traditional speaker. She didn't write a big speech or create fancy presentations. Instead, she organized her notebooks. She documented case studies. She created simple observation guides that anyone could follow. A young human doctor named Peter Collins arrived at Dusthaven during the 3rd week. He was 28 years old, eager and energetic, and he wanted to learn everything about Maya's methods. "I've been a trauma counselor for 5 years, Peter told her, "but I've been doing it all wrong. I talk too much. I try to fix everything immediately. I never just sit and watch like you do." Maya started teaching him through demonstration. She brought him along when she sat with survivors. She showed him how to notice the small signals, the subtle changes that indicated healing or distress. She taught him that silence could be more powerful than words. "The hardest part is fighting the urge to do something," Peter said after observing Maya work with a Tellurian family. "I kept wanting to jump in and help, but you just sat there and they figured things out themselves." "Sometimes people need space to heal," Maya said. "Our job isn't to heal them. It's to create safety while they heal themselves. Peter took notes furiously, asking questions that Maya actually felt comfortable answering. Teaching one person felt natural. Teaching 3,000 would be different. The conference was 2 weeks away when Helen gathered the entire counseling team for a meeting. She announced that Maya's observation method had reduced trauma symptoms in survivors by 60% compared to traditional approaches alone. The numbers were remarkable. "This works," Helen said, looking at Maya, "and the galaxy needs to know about it." That night, Maya couldn't sleep. She kept thinking about standing on a stage in front of thousands of people. Her hands shook just imagining it. But then she thought about Kessa drawing in the dust, about Temvara singing his songs, about Throck finding his way back through movement, about Claire finally letting herself cry. She thought about all the other survivors across the galaxy who might need someone to simply sit with them and see them as they were. Maya pulled out her datapad and started writing. Not a speech, but a simple guide, a way to teach others to watch and listen and be present. If she could help one survivor, maybe she could help many. She just had to find the courage to try. The conference hall on Unity Station was enormous. Maya stood backstage, looking out at the rows and rows of seats filling with doctors, counselors, and emergency responders from every corner of the galaxy. Her hands were sweating. Her heart felt like it might burst through her chest. Helen stood beside her, calm and steady. "You don't have to give a big speech," she reminded Maya. "Just show them what you showed us. Be yourself." Maya nodded, but her throat felt tight. In 15 minutes, she would walk onto that stage. In 15 minutes, 3,000 beings would be watching her. Peter appeared at her elbow. "I set up everything like you asked. The observation exercises are ready. The case study videos are loaded. You've got this." "Maya." The announcement came. "Please welcome Maya Winters, specialist in cross-species trauma observation." Maya walked onto the stage on shaking legs. The lights were bright. The audience was a sea of faces from dozens of species. She reached the podium and looked down at her notes. Her vision blurred. She couldn't do this. Then she saw them. In the third row, sitting together, Kessa, the Kravathi child, with her scales now a healthy blue-gray. Temvara, the Osiri elder, his silver skin bright. Claire, the human woman who could finally rest. And Throck, the warrior who had found his honor again. They had come to support her. Helen had brought them as a surprise. Maya took a deep breath. She put her notes aside. "I never spoke up in class," she began, her voice quiet but clear in the silent hall. "I was the student in the back corner who never raised her hand. My professors thought I wasn't paying attention. My classmates thought I had nothing to say. But I was watching. I was learning. I was seeing things that others missed because they were too busy talking." She paused, gathering her courage. 6 weeks ago, I went to Dust Haven. I met survivors who were drowning in grief. Trained counselors were trying to help them, using every method they knew. But it wasn't working. Not because the counselors were bad at their jobs, but because they were trying to make everyone heal the same way. Maya activated the screen behind her. It showed Kessa drawing in the dust. "This is Kessa. She's 8 years old. She lost her parents in the plague." Every counselor tried to get her to talk about her feelings. But Kessa doesn't heal through talking. She heals through drawing. The next image showed Temvara organizing supplies. "This is Temvara." He hummed the same song for 2 weeks straight. The counselors tried to stop him, thinking it was a symptom of distress. But humming is how Osiri processed grief. He needed to finish his morning song. Maya showed more examples. Claire working without rest. Throck sitting in darkness. Each survivor displaying their pain in different ways that looked wrong to outside observers, but were actually their natural healing processes. "I didn't cure these people," Maya said. "I didn't fix them. I just watched them. I learned their languages, not the words they spoke, but the ways they moved and acted and existed. And then I gave them space to heal in their own ways." She stepped away from the podium, her fear fading as she focused on what mattered. "I'm going to teach you what I learned, not through a lecture, through practice. Because observation is something you have to do, not something you can just hear about." For the next hour, Maya led the audience through observation exercises. She showed videos of survivors from different species and asked the audience to identify the nonverbal signs of distress and healing. She taught them to sit quietly and notice small changes. She explained how different cultures express emotion in ways that might seem strange but are perfectly natural for them. Traditional counselors in the audience began to shift uncomfortably. An older human doctor named Richard Lawson stood up. "This seems very passive," he said, his tone critical. "Are you suggesting we just sit back and do nothing while people suffer?" Maya felt her old fear rise, but she pushed through it. "I'm suggesting we do the hardest thing of all. We be present without trying to control the outcome. We give people the dignity of healing in their own way and their own time." "But what about evidence-based treatment?" another counselor challenged. "What about proven therapeutic methods?" Before Maya could answer, someone else stood up. It was Claire. "I'm a survivor from Dusthaven," she said, her voice strong. "I had 5 different counselors try to help me using all their proven methods. They gave me medication. They ran group therapy. They taught me breathing exercises. Nothing worked. I was dying inside, and nobody saw it." Claire looked at Maya. Then she came. She didn't try to fix me. She didn't tell me what I should feel or how I should grieve. She just sat with me until I was ready to feel it myself. She saved my life by doing what looked like nothing. More survivors in the audience stood. One by one, they shared their stories. A Kravathi veteran who had been healed through combat meditation, and a Siri scholar who needed to analyze their grief in their own logical way. A Talarian child who processed trauma through building things with their hands. They all had the same message. Maya's method worked because it respected who they were instead of trying to make them fit a standard treatment model. The criticism faded. Doctors and counselors began asking real questions about how to implement observation techniques, how to recognize healing versus avoidance, how to balance active treatment with patient presence. Maya answered each question simply and clearly, drawing from her experiences. When the session ended, hundreds of beings lined up to speak with her. Peter stood beside her, helping coordinate the crowd. "I told you," he whispered. "You're changing everything." 6 months later, Maya stood in a medical station called Crossroads. A hull breach had traumatized 300 beings, and she was here with a team of counselors she had trained. They moved through the survivors with quiet confidence, watching and listening, and responding to individual needs instead of following rigid protocols. Maya observed a young counselor named Andrea Chen working with a frightened alien child. Andrea wasn't forcing conversation. She was drawing pictures with the child, letting them communicate in their own way, just like Maya had taught her. Helen found Maya in the observation room. "The Galactic Medical Corps wants you to know that your training program has been implemented in 47 systems. Trauma recovery rates have improved by an average of 58%. Maya looked out at the counselors working with survivors. "It's not really my program," she said. "It's just teaching people to remember something humans have always known. Sometimes the best thing you can do for someone is simply be there with them." Her datapad buzzed. A message from Kessa. The young Kravathi was now training to be a counselor herself, using art therapy to help other children process trauma. She had attached a drawing. It showed 2 figures sitting together in the dust, one teaching the other to draw. Maya smiled. She had never become the loud voice in the classroom. She had never learned to speak up the way her professors wanted, but she had learned something more important. She had learned that the quietest approach could create the loudest impact, that being present was sometimes more powerful than having all the answers, and that watching someone with true attention was its own form of healing. Her training was now being used to train survivors across the galaxy. And it all started because one quiet student in the back of the class had been paying attention all along.